Good evening, brothers and sisters. I'm very happy to be here to discuss something that I've been toiling with for some time, and that is this whole ideology, of the African slave trade. The entire ideology of the African slave trade. We have to be very cognizant of what this is, and what it means to us, and why would this story be offered unto us? It's something that we have to be cognizant of. It's something that we have to question. We have to question it. We have to question it. We have no alternative than to question what's going on. So I'm gonna give you time to get here, tell your brothers and sisters about it, so we can actually have a dialogue. This is something that we can certainly talk about. It's something that we've all experienced. I'm Dr. Millere, your host, otherwise known as Dr. Mauricelm, or rather Minister Mauricelm X, but Dr. Millere, your host. So our discussion today is about the North Atlantic slave trade, and we've got to really concentrate if we are serious about our freedom, serious about our liberation and our equality. We got to really concentrate. It's important. It's important that we know exactly what's going on, because our very lives depend on it, especially in areas of politics, And this time of politics is no different than the other times. It's no different. It's no different. We have to understand. We have to understand exactly what's going on. What is happening to us? How do we get here? What is the difference today than 50 years? And what is the difference 50 years ago from 50 years prior to that? And what is the difference 50 years prior to that? We have to know our disposition. See, the time has changed, but the disposition hasn't changed. The years may increase, may get older, we may go into different timelines, but the dispensation is the same. And that dispensation is that you are in the age of slavery. You are in the function of slavery. You have to understand that. So in understanding that we are in bondage, truly understanding that we are in bondage, if you truly understand what that is and what it means to be in bondage, then you will question everything that the enemy has told you. Everything that appears to be in your black print, you will question that. And you're going to question it because you know, being in bondage, you have an understanding that you can't trust anything that the enemy tells you. You have that understanding. You have that understanding. And so this is what we're going to be talking about. This dialogue is a very simple dialogue. It's something that we must understand and something that we must deal with in this time and period that we're in. We have to deal with these issues. Kamala Harris becoming the first woman president is not going to deliver you. That's not going to deliver you in this day and time. That's not going to deliver you. It's not going to happen. We've got to have a clear mindset of what we must be doing to liberate ourselves while we're in bondage. Because there's two liberations. There's a liberation in bondage, under oppression. There's a price for that. And then there's the after work of that liberation. In other words, where you are physically, sociologically, financially, psychologically, and mentally free, religiously free, and all those other ologies that you can think of. Because these things will begin to depend on you. And what you don't understand, and what I'm trying to tell you today, brothers and sisters, is that your freedom, your justice, and your equality is always dependent on you. You can't ask a man to set you free. Can't do it. You can't do it. You can't ask him to set you free. You can't ask him because he's not going to set you free. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that. We've got to understand what it is, what it means. We have to understand what it is and what it means to be in oppression. We're not free. We're not free. The prison has just been made larger. More technology has made the prison less conceivable. We can't see that we're in bondage, so we operate and act as if we're in freedom. We're not free. We're not free. Anytime you got to have a passport to go and come, you're not free. Those things were put in place not for the white man. They were put in place for us. Those things were put in place for us. We don't have a pass. If you own an island, I want you to think about this. If you own an island, you're the chief owner of that island. You control the boats. You can control the planes. You can control the cars. You can control the education. You control everything on that island because you own it. And the people that are living on that island, and you make that island inaccessible to anything else outside, and make the people inaccessible, and make everything else inaccessible to the people, then you have control. You have control. And you can go and come as you please. But because you own the planes, the boats, the stores, the banks, and all of that, the people can't go as they please. You control the jobs. The people can't go as they please. You can go as you please, but the people can't go as they please. See? Because you're controlling everything. That's the situation you're in when it comes to this white man. I don't care how many elections they have. Your situation is not going to change until you change it. You got to take the chance to float in the water if it kills you. Even if it kills you, you got to take the chance. Because freedom has a cost. You'll face death trying to be free. You'll face death. Many of our slave forefathers faced death to get freedom. We would have the level of liberty in oppression. Because I have to say that because we're not free. But we wouldn't have the level of liberty in the oppression that we're in today had it not been for somebody fighting for you and I, right, in the past. Have it. And you have to understand that. You got to understand that. And we must allure, we must align ourselves and access and accessorize everything to give us freedom. And in all of it, we need everything, all the answers. Everything is right. We need that. It doesn't have to meet mass approval, but as long as it's used to help us get free, we need that. Now, I'm setting the groundwork because I want you to understand that you can trust anything the enemy tells you. That's the beginning of this lecture series. And we're going to have 10 parts because we have to understand what invasion is. That this is the entire key to oppression of you and I. When someone invades you, not just your country, invades your mind, invades your emotions, right? Because once he invaded, he can manipulate it to invade who you are, who you truly are, to invade what your purpose truly is. See? And that's what this man has done. And he gave you and I the lie, because that's what it is, this North Atlantic slave trade lie that was palatable for us. Same way he did the Jesus lie. They told you Jesus was nailed to a tree and you believed it. So you went out and bought crosses from the enemy, from the one you listened to the story, your own story. The white man sold it to you and made his Jesus white, right? Because he was in control, he was in charge, and that you would look to that white Jesus as a savior to die for the sins of the world. Now, how foolish that is. How ignorant is that? Not ignorant for the white man. He's a genius for coming up with that. But your ignorance to believe that a white man would die for your sins when he's killing and hanging and robbing and raping and doing everything else to you every day. It's right in your face. But now that your eyes have become open, now that you're waking from your slumber and you're looking toward the sun, you know how you're waking up. It's like when you're waking up in the bed. When you look out the window, you open the curtain, look out the window, that sun is so bright that you got to put your hands up so that you can adjust. You got to adjust yourself to the power of the light of the sun. But the more you become acclimated to the light of the sun, then you can see everything. You can see everything. There's nothing that you can miss. But so you got brothers and sisters that are still asleep. And brothers and sisters, I'm asking you to wake them up. You got to wake them up. And it's rough. It's hard. It's not easy getting on here. Nobody supports you. We don't support each other. So we have to sacrifice to get on here to educate you. So you'll find this on the education. It won't be on the news and politics. See, there's a new focus. We've got to educate the black man. The black preachers have been sleeping too long. They're ignorant. You got a lot of them that just don't care. They're willfully asleep. Or they see what's going on, but they close their eyes to it anyway, so they won't have to do their job. It's time for us to wake up and see that this man has been lying to us, playing with us, manipulating us, turning the black man against the black woman, turning the black woman against the black man, destroying the homes, destroying the fabric of black life, destroying your history. The man won't even allow you to even talk about your history. We got to wake up. It's time to wake up, brothers and sisters. We got to. And it seems that this election, every election is intricate, but this election you can see as plain as the nose is on your face. You can see that all hope is gone. You have literally seen and are seeing the decline. You can physically see the decline of America, and they're covering the airways with this puffy situation. Now they got the man that owns Abercrombie and Fitch. But what it does is it's blocking your attention to what's really happening. Kim Jong-un is in Russia now, and it has its troops, Korean troops in Russia. They're getting ready to fight. America can't control and police the world anymore because, China is about to get involved and Iran is about to get involved. And even though America has a lot of play in Iraq, you're going to find out that Iraq is going to get involved too. This America that you see within the next 4 years is going to be a drastic change. A drastic change. And here's the thing. The white man has treated the black man so bad. He's treated him so bad that he may not even get him to be able to participate in the military. Right? Or the military. He may not be able to get him to compete or even serve in the military. See? Because this is the fall. You're seeing the fall. And now we have to discuss the lie. See, the slave trade had to be older than 400 years. You can't, if you do the math, brothers and sisters, all you got to do is do the math. I pray, I implore you to do the math. All you got to do is do the math. If you do the math, then you'll find out from the math. If you do the math, you'll find out there is no way to incorporate 1 billion servants under slavery of darker skinned people, people of color, black, diasporic Africans. There's no way that in 400 years you can control global slavery. See, because It wasn't only the American blacks that were put into slavery. I'm gonna say that because that's your bondage. You're the American African, but I'll just say the bondage term because I know a lot of y'all are familiar with that. But you've got the Americas. That means North America, South America. Okay, so that's two. You got England. The blacks there, they was in slavery too. Blacks served in slavery there too. I don't care how much they talk about freedom. Can't believe them. France, I don't care how much they talk about freedom. They had black slaves too. They had black slaves. You had India. You had Asia and Eurasia. Australia. Okay. Mauritania. Everywhere that there were dark-skinned people. What is present-day Texas, which used to be Tejas Africano, right? The Mesoameric area, all these areas are black. They're dark. See? All these are black areas. You name it, Hawaii. You look up the history and go all the way back, dark-skinned people there. What the white man did, you have to understand that. You got to respect it. You got to respect it. You don't have to like it, but you got to respect it. What the white man did is he set certain things in play. The minute that he came down from the Mediterranean, came down out of those mountains, he had to come down. He didn't have a choice because he didn't have any food to eat. He was scientifically lazy and uninventive, ignorant. He was a meat eater and even ate his own flesh and blood. I mean, his children. They attacked women. They drew straws to find out who they were going to eat. And they didn't cook them. They were eating them raw. Eating the blood and guts. Just telling you. I want you to understand. You wonder where all these plagues come from eating all of that uncooked meat. Right? McDonald's just had a situation. So you have to understand that everything that wasn't healthy for the body, it's not healthy when the body doesn't have a mind to guide it, to intelligence, right? To ingesting is going to increase the health of the body, increase the strength, increase the immunity, and all of that. That's not healthy. So they were lacking food, they were lacking nutrition, they were lacking education. They had quote unquote castles and kingdoms. Quote unquote castles and kingdoms they had. But what they didn't have was an organized system of economy. Organized system of economy. They didn't have organized system of barter, finances, whatever you want to call it. None of these things existed. They didn't have it. So this begins to affect them. Now, he created a process called invasion. We're gonna talk about that because I think that's very, very important. The first evolution of this thing called invasion, right, that he had to put into play. It's important to note there are several dispensations of religious slave trade prior to the North Atlantic Slave Trade Organization, now known as N.A.T.O. When you hear N.A.T.O, understand that you're talking about the North Atlantic Slave Trade Organization, or the North Atlantic Trade Organization, which was trading slaves, human trafficking. Same thing that they killed. Well, same thing that Epstein was unalive for. Same thing that P. Diddy is having to answer for. Same thing that what's the guy that owns Abercrombie and Finch? Same thing that these guys are having to answer for. This is age old. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Nothing new. And this is a money grab. The whole thing is about power. The whole thing is about power. Right? If you don't challenge the power, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But they paying you, you're going to do what they tell you to do. If they're paying you and they're letting you make money, you're going to do exactly what they tell you to do. And if you try to stand up, right, and feel that you're an exception to that, then that's when things begin to happen, right? That's when things begin to happen. See, you can pay for a lie. Yeah, you can pay for it. Can't pay for the truth, but you can pay for a lie. Now, it's important to note that there were several dispensations of the religious slave trade prior to the North Atlantic slave trade. This is important. The first one you had was a European and Mediterranean Hellenistic slave trade. That happened with the Punic War. And prior to the Punic War, there were other wars. So you say the Punic War, you even got to give them names. Because their whole purpose of them coming out of the Mediterranean was to get some land. They had to get some land. They had to get some people that they could use, survive from. So they made it with these other communities. Now their whole thought pattern was to take it over. And they're not thinking wrong. They're not thinking wrong. See? And appeasement makes an aggressor weak. Our ancestors appeased aggressors because they weren't used to war. They fought war, but they weren't used to war. There was no need. Our laws never talked about war. We didn't have a need for that. War is unintelligent. Anybody that will fight beyond discussing things to find mutual benefit for survival and existence is ignorant. That's ignorance. Now, it's saying that it doesn't take an intelligent person to fight or to overtake someone. However, it does take a military strategy to get this bully off your back, right? You'll have to respond, in other words, with fighting. Violence will beget violence, right? If a person is attacking you, the only way a bully is going to get his feet off your neck, his knee off your neck, is for you to fight him. It's the only way. Other than that, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. You're going to have to stand up for yourself. And see, you look like a fool expecting Kamala Harris to deliver you or Donald Trump, because it's not going to change the black disposition. However, I would be more willing to deal with an all-out racist and let me know where he comes from, where he's coming from, rather than someone who wants to look beyond the issue. It won't answer direct questions. See, because you got problems on your hands. When you got a behind-the-scene conspirator aiding and abetting the enemy, you got something on your hands. Somebody that would do anything for power, you got something on your hands. If you got somebody who come out front and tell you straight up and down, I don't like you, I'm not for you, I'll deal with them, because that's something that we can agree on. And at least I know what I'm dealing with. You don't know what you're dealing with, right? Because you believe that you're free. You're not free. We're under oppression. There's no such thing as women's rights and freedom. That's an oppression term. There's no such thing as liberation and freedom. That's an oppressive term. People that are free don't have to liberate themselves. There's no such thing as religious rights and freedom. That's an oppressive term. You got to have rights religiously, right? Because there are other religions, right, that will overrun you and overgovern you if you don't have quote unquote religious rights, right? Educational rights. You have a right to study whatever you want, right? But the man tells you you can't even study African history now in the schools. You got to think about that. Understand what this man is saying. He want to do what he want to do. He don't care who it affects. This thing has been happening for 5,000 to 7,000 years. The slave trade and the mutual benefit of the so-called white man has been happening 5,000 to 7,000 years. You don't believe that? I'll prove it. If you look at the European Mediterranean area where they started, and why they came down. This happened well over 8,000 years ago. Women, am I right? This happened well over, we're in 2000 now. This happened well over, yes, 8,000 years ago when he had to come out of the mountains and begin to integrate with you. This is the term integration, to come among you, right? To become a part of that society. So you have people who didn't know about rules, didn't know about moral principles, moral law. They didn't know the 10 Commandments, right? The only thing they were concerned about is thou shalt not get caught. So when they kill you and they stole you and they carried you back, thou shalt not get caught. When they married and produced children with you to take you over, the whole idea is to keep you blind from what they're really doing. And they're doing the same thing today. And it amazes me, brothers and sisters, how many people that think that they're free. You're not free. We're in bondage. And I'm here to remind you, we're in bondage. You're not free. You're not free. You're in bondage. I don't care how much money you make or don't make. You're in the same situation. Same bag, same boat. So the European, Mediterranean, Hellenistic area, they came down, got with us. That took about 2,000 years because they had to create a population of light-skinned people. That's what you have to say. That there's no such thing as white people. They're pink people, albinos, right? It's the last color scale of what is considered color or black. Last color scale, albinus. And then you have albino, the almond albino. So they created these albinos. In other words, the Africans that have been put in the Mediterranean, and there were castles built. The Africans built castles after the antediluvian period, place of the flood, right? They built castles, built cities in the rocks for these people that were being born in a far Africa. You heard the term Australopithecus afarensis, or Lucy, right? Lucy. When the scientists who discovered those people there, they knew that there were those that were being born because of the skull structure and the bleaching, the lightening of the bones. They knew that was because when you're black, your bones are darker. When you're white, your bones are lighter. I mean, it's what's called white. I'll put it that way. So they began to see these and understand there was a trail that led to the Mediterranean, right? A nomadic trail. They began to see that those that couldn't handle the heat, and it's also in African history, they were putting them in these mountains in the Mediterranean. And they built community cities that would take science there, and they would constantly minister to them. All of the prophets went there. When they were going around ministering, they were ministering to people who had been cast out and couldn't otherwise get these lectures. And they had to be very studied in order to do it. Had to be very, very studied in order to do it. And I want you to understand that. So Africa didn't push them out and leave them alone, but they set up a system for them. Now, instead of taking the science or using the science for their benefit, they will wait to be taken care of. They were scientifically lazy, sociologically lazy, psychologically lazy. They had bad practices of heathenism. Okay? They began to make up their own gods. They were very rebellious people. These are the people, when you read in the Quran and the Bible and all the other holy books, that the people of God were told to stay away from. Not because God deemed them bad. When I say God, I'm talking about human form. You're God with a bloodline of God. I want you to understand that. But the writings, and we'll talk about that a little later, the writing was so that the people that didn't respect the law would be kept away from people that did respect moral law. Right? to treat thy neighbor as thyself, right? Right? So these individuals that were told you got to follow these laws, they returned and went back to the mountain, right? Angry and upset because, and it's important to note, at this point that they had an area where their kind existed, they began to, even in their production, to keep the lighter, kill the darker, right? Because there was anger. They didn't even want black babies. They had black babies being born. They started to kill them. And they began to turn everything, the term that we're considering now white. And this is as a clannish type ideal. When you, just like when you talk about eugenics, not to get off the subject, when you talk about eugenics, that is a false, racist, scientific ideology that talk about superiority. So they begin to teach this superiority. This is old. In the Mediterranean, about 2,000 years ago, while they were coming down to integrate among you, acting like they were following the laws, right? Because when they would do that, they group up amongst themselves, their own kind, right? Those that would go with them, then they could manipulate, right, to take over. So this comes the life of the Greeks. The Greeks are born out of this. The Greeks are born out of this, and you have to know it. See, this is some good knowledge, because you have to know it. That when the Greeks are born out of this, then they say, hey, we got to get a place to call our own. So they said, now we'll organize our kingdom from the kingdom that we saw. We'll duplicate everything that we saw, because Africa was a place of knowledge. If you listen to Heraclitus, Pythagoras, Socrates, all of them will tell you. All of them will let you know. They were coming down because this was a center of study for them, right? For them to go to the place, which was the center of education, where they could learn things, take it back to their land, right? You read Socrates and the Minnow, right? You read the protagonist. See, this is his history, where he's coming down, sending his people to come down to learn from us so they could take it back. Pythagoras didn't have a theorem. He got the theorem out of Africa. He got the theorem out of Kemet, or what they're calling Egypt. There's no such thing as Egypt. This is a colonial term. This term is colonial. There's no such thing as Egypt. And I've tried to tell black brothers and sisters, stop using the term Egypt. You're giving credence to colonialism. It is Kemet. Kemet is the term. No such thing as Egypt. But we've got to learn. We got to learn better and do better. So it's time for teaching. It's time for teaching, because we already been made free. And when this war happened, I'm telling you, all you got to do is go and look. Korea, Kim Jong-un is visiting Russia. He's in Russia now. He's got, while he's on leave, his sister is in charge. He's got Korean troops right now in Russia. They're about to fight because America is sending in troops. America is sending in allies. Now, China is waiting to get involved. They're just keeping you blind to everything that's going on with this Puffy and Epstein thing and all these other people that's supposed to be coming up with these charges. That's to keep you and I blinded. Never in history had a black man been so powerful that they would charge him for being in control of something like that. But you out of your mind. There's no way that Sean Combs could have gotten where he's gotten if the federal government hadn't allowed him to get there. And he himself is the Fed. Rick Ross and many others. People, you like, how are they getting all of this? Or how are they building up? This is the carrot. This is the carrot. The government is making it so. The white man would never put anybody in front of you that he doesn't control. And if you even think that that's not true, why, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. So the Greeks wanted to take over. I'm going to have to rush through this. I'm not going to keep you long on it because we're going to set the stage for next Wednesday. We'll be coming forth to you every Wednesday to talk about this. Now, the Greek Orthodox came with Alexandria, right? How long was that ago? All you got to do is do your history. All you got to do is do your history. Alexandria came. Alexandria's whole point was to set up kingdoms. He was a warmonger. He said, these people are people of peace, and it will be easy for us to take them. The same thing that Christopher Columbus said when he came to the Americas. These people are people of peace. That means he studied you the first 2,000 years. These people are people of peace. It will be easy for us to take them. Be easy for us to take them because they're people of peace. You have to understand that. So you got to understand what's going on and what you're in. The white man's been doing this a long time. He didn't just wait for you to come along before he started doing this. Why, he's been doing it the entire time. He studied you. He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows you better than you know yourself. So you have to understand exactly what's going on. He'll continue to critique or fine-tune this machinery that he's created. And he will die before he lets you go. He will literally die before he lets you go. The Greek Orthodox, through Alexandria, was to use God in Hellenic history, right? Because that Hellenic history was Mediterranean first. The whole point was to use God. And by using God and interpreting that God in ways that were familiar with the Africans, it would give him a place in the temples to speak and plead his case to become a part of their society. Now, it's important to note that the Kemetic kingdoms rejected him. Very important. They rejected him. So he left there because there was too many, and there were those that had committed themselves to war because there were smaller wars that were fought and they found out what they were doing. Alexandria left there and he went to Asia, went over to those people. When he went to Asia, he went to set down his rod, so to speak, and to assimilate and integrate with those people. And he had more success there than Africa to try. And he wanted even a monument built up in his honor. They wouldn't do it. So his conquest, his whole purpose was to go out and overtake smaller kingdoms, still procreating with the people there, and to build up, right? Because at this point, they could fight to overtake lands, right, which had become an accepted legitimate, right? If they were fighting to overtake lands, that's acceptable. That's what chess is about. The Africans will have to fight to retake these lands, right? But by this time, they had so many people they had integrated with. And these individuals had become so common. They were married into the family now. So they began to choose sides. Many of them went with Alexandria to his armies, right? Because he promised them that they would have power to rule, right? He promised them that they would have power to rule. So this begins to happen. Now, Greece ruled for 500 years. Greece ruled for 500 years. So we got 2,000 years, right? We've got 1,500 years, which brings us to 3,500 years. Then we got 500 years, which give us 4,000 years, right? that this system has been going on. And this is why you have the wars. We're not going to be in bondage. I'm going to put you in bondage. You can't put me in bondage. God made me to put you in bondage. Misusing religion, right? From their point of view. From their point of view. And you have to remember that. You have to think about it. You have to remember that. You got to think about it. Now, the Greek Orthodox lasts for 500 years as a kingdom, ruled for 50 years. Right? They began to fight amongst themselves. Right? They even began to divide. The darker from the lighter. Right? So you get the Dagos, which is the Romans, the Italians. Right? You get the Greeks. Same people, same blood. But the lighter divorced itself from the darker. Now, the Greek was the lighter, the Dago Italian was the darker. They began to fight wars amongst themselves. You heard of the story of Caesar and Brutus? It's the same as Jesus and Judas. Same story. All written by William Tinsdale or William Shakespeare, a black brother. Was not white, like you've been misled to accept. And he's explaining one, religious power as a rule, and the other one, political power as a rule, and the failures of such. When the Romans come into play, right, Caesar was a leading political figure. When the Romans come into play, they grab politics and religion. Now you get into the Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church, there was a place called Antioch, 70 AD. In Rome, there's a place called Antioch. And it's Antioch. Antioch is where it all began. But they said, we're killing, because they were constantly killing black folks. Right? There was no such thing as Christianity then. You had Islam. To be Christian meant to be Christ-like. Jesus, the one you call Jesus, Yahshua, Leah, Asa, Jehovah, Jireh, whatever you want to call him, the one you call Jesus was an Islamic religious leader who believed in keeping the law and believed it and taught it so much that the Greeks and the Romans gave him the name Christos, right? Magnesia, which meant the Messiah, the one who would deliver, right? So him being the light, what they call the light, or the deliverer, the social deliverer, that's all a Christ means. Christ just means social deliverer, one who would set those free from captivity, reform. That's all it means. That's all it means. Same thing that Minister Malcolm and Martin Luther King was doing. Very same thing. But they grabbed politics and religion and put it together and said this would be our rule and our fate. Now, the Roman kingdom is the first kingdom that actually takes religion, politics, misuse it for the sake of power. First ones. Prior to that, there was manipulation. But as a military power, the first one to use it. This is in Antioch, 70 AD. This is in Antioch. So you have to understand that this has been moving. This whole thing has been moving the entire time. You can't get all these people on a ship and bring them to different lands. And these lands just going to let you come there. No, you've been there before. The first push in all of these continents is to integrate them and to make like you're friendly, to pretend to be a friend. That's the first move, first push, first move. You have to understand that. First push, first move. You got to understand that. You have to understand it. Now, not just Africa, but they did this to the Americas, right? Because the Africans were selling to the Americans. They were acting like they were the African friends. So wherever the African went, then they were going with them. You understand? Wherever the African went, they're going with him. Wherever he's set up, whatever educational universities are set up, he's going with them. Now, I want to say this very quickly because I think there are those that may not know. I want you to understand that America was the extension of Atlantis, was the second citadel. It had been there for thousands of years, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Was a mimic of present-day Cairo, which was the lower form of Ethiopia at that time. And that Ethiopia itself had other areas where it had helped, right, finance the Egyptian kingdom as they went out. Because what they brought back, they were bringing it back to an imperial dynasty. So you have to understand that a kingdom was supporting a higher kingdom, right? A kingdom was supporting a higher kingdom, an imperial palace, which brings in Haile Selassie in the lineage of the Lion and the tribe of Judah, the true lineage in the Lion and the tribe of Judah. So they mixed these things together, right? Because they knew, they said, man, these people are vast, they're intelligent, they're on every continent. Everywhere we went, we've seen people that look like them. We'll have to be shrewd. So we need to take our time and know these people. So they took thousands of years to know you, to learn your religion, to learn your responses, to learn who you were as a people, to learn how you deal with one another. And they're doing the very same thing today. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. But that was for the sake of power. Now, you have, from the time of the Romans, you have 2,000 years, uninterrupted power rule, you have 2,000 years. And we were already at 4,000, right? So that's 6,000 years. 2,000 years from that time, and they from the time of the crucifix all the way to our present day. That's 6,000 years. Understand that. Understand it. That's 6,000 years. Now, in the light that there's 6,000 years, right? From that time to the 20th century was 6,000 years. You still had slavery going on. The fight was who was going to control the economy of slavery. When Rome came into power, two things happened. They were fighting amongst one another so much for power that they splintered the Roman kingdom. They splintered it into 16 different kingdoms. Out of it came France, Spain, Holland, Norway, Germany, you name it. Whatever country, England, you name it, whatever countries you can name. All the countries you could think of, Australia, all the countries you could think of came out of that. So what they did then was they said, okay, now we don't have to pay tariff. We're fighting for independence amongst one another. So they wouldn't have to keep paying these Roman Catholic priests to bless them to get into this slavery. Now, they say, well, we'll go to the Americas and we'll run our slaves in this corporation. You can go and this will be your area. So that's why you find some areas in the north that belongs to England, some belongs to Spain, some belongs to France in the south, right? In the Midwest, France. Here in America, just here in America alone, Spain for the south as far as Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, right? Some Greek, right? You name Atlanta, right? Atlantis, these are Greek names, right? You got German names, right? Greer, South Carolina, it's German. So you begin to find out all of these came together and said, look, we still make money because we still have slaves. So we need to stop fighting amongst one another and exist together at a convention that will keep us in charge. This is how you get the Geneva Convention and the North Atlantic Slave Trade Organization, which is otherwise known as N.A.T.O, right? Because the Catholics ran and they said, man, the priests were like kings. The priests were just like kings. It's like, man, we got to get from under Rome's rule. So they began to fight Rome. They came together, enemies came together to fight the oppressive Roman regime or government, right? The priesthood, because it was like king. They were like kings. Now, when they did that, England surfaces as a major power because it's more organized than the other ones, right? They began to fight the smaller ones by using Rome, and then after that, they turned on Rome to create what was called the Anglican Church. This is where the Protestant churches are coming out of. So then you had the French Protestants and the Irish Catholics fighting, right? All of this time from 70 AD, which was the second century, 70 AD, all the way to where we are in the 20th century. We have made it to the 21st century yet. Now, prior to the Mediterranean and Alexandria making the status, the claim, right, political claim of status as a leader, right? You can't call him a king, you have to call him a warrior. You call him as the one that goes forth setting up kingdom, but you can't call him a king because he was a warmonger. While this is going on, the Arab has a slave trade. That was prior to that, during that, and before the Greeks began to fight, because they were fighting them back and forth, right? And the slave began to rise up in a place called Carthage, which we know Rome's going to come back and take again, is present-day Libya. And you have to understand these things. All of this was going on. All of these things was going on. So we're looking at the years just on the thumbnail scratch, because we have to cover it in that way to be able to talk about the series, right? Because if we were to talk about every little thing that was going on, we probably would never be done teaching this. But just to give you some understanding of what's going on. So from the time that Rome had taken it, which is important, that's another 2,000 years. 1,000 years prior to the Mediterranean, right? 1,000 years prior to the Mediterranean, right? Which brother against brother. That's a whole nother subject in itself, which still happens today. So you got about 7,000 years. Deduct 400 of those years to the American slave trade and the smaller countries, France, Spain, Holland, Germany, Munich, all of that, because that was the end. That was the end of what they'd done. They had already been instituting colonialism, right? Which is still slavery, but it's psychological in the sense that if you accept our rule and you don't fight against it, we'll take your leaders and give you some money. We'll give you position. You have to understand that. So you still had what happened in the beginning, bad seed being planted, brothers betraying brothers, which put us in the situation that we're in now, not listening to our elders, not following religious rule, not following righteousness, put us in the situation that we're in now. You have to understand that. You got to understand that. So here we are. You got to release the slaves because the slaves began to revolt. And that's too expensive to try to keep them in slavery. Plus, all the slaves you didn't bring over on the ship, a lot of them you put in bondage on reservations. You see what the original African American Indian looks like. I say African American, not African American, but the native African to America. The American African, not African American, the American African. See, because they had came over thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years earlier. They were already here. They were making trips back and forth. This is how Columbus got wind of it. When they befriended the Africans in continental Africa and other places where the Africans were, the Moors in Spain and all of that, they traveled with them. Columbus had a black captain, African captain, that traveled with him. I believe his name was Espinosa, traveled with him. They were bringing them to all of these places. And they said, these people are peaceful. They'll be easy to take. Why are they being so nice to us? They'll be easy to take over. They began to integrate first, act like friends, create babies among us, turn the mind of their babies, right? Act like the underdogs, manipulation, commercialism, right? They're using smallpox disease and all that to wipe us out, right? This began to happen. The Anglican Church and the French Protestant was the last one. They fought against the governing powers to get their own power, right? And they said, we'll never fight again. The English churches later released the Quakers, right? These Quakers came out, setting up churches, found out that they couldn't teach religion to these people because they didn't believe that God would put them in bondage. So they stopped teaching them religion. Many of the Quakers went to their own areas to set up, right? They were divided against themselves, right? Religion and politics, church and state. They went to set their own communities up. The others, what did they do? They had slavery. They practiced slavery, right? And they became Baptists, right? They became Methodists. They became Episcopalian. All of them owned slaves in America. That's the dirty secret. That's the dirty secret. It's in your face. All of it's right in your face. All of it's right in your face. So this is where we want to get to. This is the one place we want to get to. So it's equally important to note that there's great difficulty in accepting the slave ship fable, fallacy only. There had to have been other factors to secure billions of dark-skinned people of color into bondage, right? So we know that it was 5,000 to 7,000 years at least where this process had to be going on. And you have to understand that today you're facing the same thing you've been facing 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, because that man's gonna always act like he's your friend. As long as you got something that he wants. When he gets what he wants, then he'll quickly show you exactly who he is. It don't matter that you can marry a white woman. She belongs to the white man. You have to understand that. The white woman belongs to the white man, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And you have to understand. You have to understand what's going on, what situation you're in. Because it's not going to change. We're going to talk about invasion. We're not going to talk about it now. We're going to wait till next Wednesday. I hope you come back to join me next Wednesday. We're going to talk about invasion, what the acronym means. And so you can get a thorough understanding, because it's very important. It's very, very, very important that you understand what's going on, because you're going to be free. You're free already, but it's going to be, right now you can't physically see it, but soon you will physically see it. So you got to know what you're walking into, though. You got to know the history. You got to know what you've been through. You got to know it. You got to know where you're going, what you're going through now. You have to understand the transatlantic slave trade and why it was told to you the way it was. See, this man has been doing this the entire time. Ever since he came into Africa, his whole point was to take you over and control you. He's not going to let you go. No such thing as a nonviolent revolution. Remember the words of Minister Malcolm. Remember the words of Minister Martin. We haven't learned. He's talking about them and us. How to disagree without being violently disagreeable. The white man doesn't want anybody that's going to disagree with him. Even if he's doing wrong, he wants you to go right along with him, and you can't do it. This forces you to the place of getting literal liberation, and you're going to have to do that. There's no way you can get away from it. The time is upon us. You'll know when the time comes. There's no way that you can get away from that. You'll never do it. You'll never get away from that. None of the African countries, continents have gained some sense of liberation and freedom, especially Haiti, without fighting. And Haiti had a lot of sellouts. Jean-Baptiste was a sellout. Toussaint-Louverture was a sellout. The only hero of Haiti was Dessalines. When you read that Jean-Baptiste was a hero, white man gave him Chicago. Louis wasn't white. Louis XVI was black, but his co-conspirators were other whites, so-called Jews, so-called fair countrymen, right? Working against black countries. Sellouts. Higher form of sellouts. Higher form. And working against independence. This is demonic. This is demonic. So, while brother trying to achieve power, at the top is the black man. At the bottom is the black man. In the beginning was black, and the end is going to be black. It was dark in the beginning, it's going to be dark in the end. But you can't get your freedom because too many of us shaking hands, drinking coffee, and eating at the table with the enemy. I'm not saying don't try to do peace talks, but just understand that peace talks are done between two enemies. You got to understand that. You got to know who you are. You talking peace? Why? Because we're two enemies that can't get along. You don't stop being enemies just because you set up a treaty, right? These are mutual stands. So we have to think about this transatlantic slave trade, why it was told us this way, and I intend to teach you the first evolution of invasion and the second evolution of invasion, and after that, you should have some knowledge, if not a thorough understanding of how things got the way they are and how long this has been happening. It's been happening more than 400 years. You can't take a few ships. If you have 500, maybe 600 ships within that, you're selling them 12 apiece. You can't take 2 months for them to get here, 2 months to get back. There's insurance and all that. And you had a lot of slave revolts on the ships. A lot of slaves jumped in the water, drowned themselves rather than be taken captive. A lot of them overtook the ships and drowned the ships and the captains and themselves. So we gotta get out of this lie. That's what it is about this trade, the North Atlantic slave trade, the lie that they put us under, and really discuss what's in front of us, what's been happening the entire time. All the way, we talking about 6 to 10,000 years. The commissions have been telling us to beware of the Hyksos. This is when they first began to come on the scene. And they didn't get powerful as a kingdom until about 7,000 years ago. You do the math. Prior to that, they were coming from underground, snatching people, pulling them underground, eating them and everything. This is where the true understanding of a Dracula comes from, or Dracula. You have to understand, brothers and sisters, this is the truth. This is what's going on. We have to unteach ourselves everything that the enemy taught us and learn the facts about what's going on. And there's a lot of history in that. Don't worry. I intend to teach you, and we've got books. Come next Wednesday, we'll have books that you can also get yourself, where you will have documented proof of everything that I'm saying. And when they come, I tell you about the line of Homo sapien that has nothing to do with you. Line of Homo sapien has nothing to do with you. That's the white man's line. Now, you say he made it with these monkeys. He's telling the truth. Talk about tails on humans. He's telling the truth. You can document history where you can find humans that had tails that were non-black. Telling the truth. You gotta see what's going on. So he continued to mate. So he is mankind. Why? He's a kind of man. He mated with monkeys. Darwin tells you in the line of Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Homo robustus, right? He's letting you know. He's letting you know. So, brothers and sisters, that's all I have for you today. Look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Hopefully at no later than 9:30, maybe as early as 7 o'clock. But I look forward to seeing you. And I really, really appreciate the time that you've spent with me. And I hope that you can get the word out about this, because it's very, very important. I want to appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. If I didn't say it in the beginning, I said now, peace be unto you. Because we have to have peace more than anything else in the world. We need peace. We got to have peace. I don't know what we're going to do if we don't have it. Right? And it has to be the peace that surpasses all understanding. It has to be that kind of peace. So the peace that God gives us. Because his peace that he gives us, nobody can take it away. So I want to thank you very much for everything that you do. And remember, we'll be here back next Wednesday, so you can certainly tune in. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.